What's up YouTube, DUEL here from Zephyr, and today I am bringing you some commentary from a live duel at Locals. So on the right you see myself playing 6 Samurai with the new support, and on the left we have Tenpai. So we start off with Shien's Dojo. We normal summon down Fuma and special summon down Anarchist. We get to go Chain Link 1 our Link 2 Battle Shogun, Chain Link 1 our Battle Shogun, Chain Link 2 will be our Anarchist, discarding a second Anarchist from the hand. At this point what you're basically doing is chain blocking from the Ash, which at this exact moment in time was a good thing to be doing because Ash is there. It then turns out that I needed to get the spell card off of the back of the Anarchist, so I do decide to use Cross Out on the Ash, and Cross Out was actually like an MVP in this particular duel. So this will allow me to resolve and grab the Gateway, which we know as soon as you get Gateway, you're in a good position. And we're going to grab the Asceticism because this will allow me to get another 6-sound monster. And with Dojo already on the board and already having 2 Bushido counters on, technically 3 Bushido counters on it, all I needed was 1 more. And that's why I desperately needed to get the Asceticism in order to get that 4th counter. So now by being able to target the Battle Shogun and summoning out the Yuraza, this allows us to put the Dojo up to 4 and Gateway onto 2. So we end up taking 2 from Gateway and 2 from Dojo. It looks like I missed putting a Bushido counter on the Dojo, but we put a Bushido counter on the Battle Shogun. So we're a Bushido counter down right now, which is just a mistake on my behalf. I didn't add one on the Dojo when I summoned the Battle Shogun. So we grab the Tactical Master, we get to summon down the Tactical Master. This puts the Dojo up to 2, puts the Gateway onto 2, and then the Battle Shogun onto 2 as well. So from this point, it's now really when you're going to start accumulating tokens. The only thing that I need to be fearful of is Nibiru, which is why I'm trying to get my Monster Negate as my next card. Because in this position here, I've still got counters or Bushido counters in order to get some more. So we get to go into Shien. Shien, I seem to find myself more so now going directly for the Great Shogun Shien. Obviously, it doesn't amass any Bushido counters, but the idea is I'm actually using it as an additional name to make Saruja, and I think that's quite easy because then you go Kizan plus the Battle Shogun plus the Grandmaster and then the General, and then that gets you your Saruja, and I've actually found good success in that lately. Obviously, triggering the Tactical Master is Chain Link 2 as well to grab us the 6 strike, activating 6 strike to bring it back, and this is how we're going to be able to synchro into Nat Beast. Now, obviously, I knew my opponent was on Tenpai, so I was like, Nat Beast is going to be very damaging for them to have to deal with. And now, currently, what I'm doing is I'm just removing the Bushido counters or making sure we've got the right count of Bushido counters, and we're now going to start taking, you know, X amount off to constantly just keep giving us free searches. So I knew that my opponent would be on a board breaker build, and the only thing that really breaks this board, outside of something like a Lava Golem or a Droplets or a Dart Ruler or something like that, is the ability to just open up multiple board breakers, so Raigekis, Lightning Storms, and everything else in between, whereas that's when Nat Beast will really help me protect. And then all I need to do is stop the monster effect, which I'm going to get with the Shien play, with the Shien in play already. So if I can stop the Sangan summoning coming down, that's one thing less that I don't need to worry about. And the other is I'm just pretty much trying to build up the strongest board possible while leaving my opponent with as little as possible to break the board itself. So we're going to summon down the Grandmaster. Obviously, this is where the Great Shogun, so the example that I was saying you earlier, the Shogun Shien search is quite important, because you keep searching out extenders, which if you've already used the Anarchist and you've already used the Master, now it's all about getting a search. And the one that I tend to go for as I'm working towards a Saruja play is the Hatsume, because Hatsume can then set you up with a Shien synchro play, or of course can set you up into other synchro plays as well. It can also help you lead into an Omega, which is quite important in this deck, which actually helped me out in one of my earlier games for this duel, like this Locals, is I activated Omega, game 1, ripped the Avatar, and then game 3, I ripped the Lava Golem, which would have broke my board completely. So I got a little bit lucky there. So we're going to go into Saruja. Saruja is going to be drawing 4 and then putting 3 back. The idea, I don't think there's really anything you want to be drawing off of the back of Saruja. It's kind of like another way to try and dig for Gateway if you need it. But, you know, I know in other builds, there's ways that you try and dig for Rescue Ferret, which is completely cool as well. In this one, I'm kind of just digging for more hand traps. Like, the idea is you try and rinse out your deck as much as possible and get your Kizans and your Grandmasters and everything else to the graveyard or through your hand, through search, through Gateway and everything else in between. And then you'll basically work from there. So you use Saryuja to summon down the Hatsume, obviously gaining more Bushido counters on Dojo and everything else. We're going to banish the Great Battle Shogun, and this will then allow us to revive one from the graveyard. So it's whether you want to be going for a Synchro level 6, which gets you a second monster negate. But I thought the one thing that could be pretty damaging is if my opponent Zard open up something like an Imperm, and they Imperm the Nat Beast and then go off. So, okay, well, the next thing I need to do is get the original Shien on the board, and then I can add the Great Shogun Shien on the board as well. And then, yes, okay, I'm going to constantly keep negating their spells, but it's like there's only so much they can do. Like, if they've opened up a hand of monsters in Tenpai, that's not going to be that helpful for them, because the first one that summons down is going to get negated by Shien. If they've opened up Field Spell, that's going to get negated by Nat Beast. If they've opened up Imperm, that's going to get negated by the original Shien. So you can kind of see that I've kind of got all my bases covered. And I suppose that's one of the reasons that the Great Shogun Shien isn't that necessary. But it's just another one of them cards that you add to your end board. And it's like, okay, worst case scenario, if they did open up an Imperm and they negated the Nat Beast, but I had my Great Shogun Shien, that is the only spell and trap that they could activate. So, it really, like, if they opened up two Imperms, for example, if they went Imperm on Nat Beast and I went, okay, negate with Shien, and then I went, okay, cool, that resolves, goes to the graveyard, activate Imperm again, then obviously that would then resolve negating the Nat Beast, but then the Great Shogun Shien would be in play, meaning that that's their only spell and trap they can have. So, anyway, we overlay two Kizans and go into Daguerres. We use Daguerres. Pretty much what you're doing with Daguerres is you're bringing back a tuner. That's what you're aiming to do, and this is where you're trying to work your way into something like a like an Omega or a Dawn Dragster. So gives you another spell or trap negate if you feel that you need it. So that's if you're really worried about board breakers. So like if I didn't go down the Nat Beast route, that's something I'd be looking for. But we're going to go into SP to clear out a bit of space. And then the idea is that I'm going to summon down the Grandmaster, giving me more Bushido counters. You just need to really keep track of the maths behind the Bushido counters, because you're going to need to make sure you're going to want to use them a little bit later on. So we're going to Omega. We use Omega to, again, clear off a bit of space and then rip our opponent's hand down to 3 because they dropped the Ash Blossom on us early doors. So we get rid of one of their starters in the form of the Dora Dora. And then you just start burning off your Bushido counters with your bit of space left over. Now, you've only got 2 spaces left, so the idea is you're going to be working your way either into a rank 4 in the form of the Kizan, or you're going to be working your way into like another Synchro play. I decided to go for the Battle Shogun, and then from this point on, there's 7 counters currently on the dojo, so we're going to remove 4 to add a card back to our hand, which basically gives us follow-up for the next turn. So we'll go with the Kizan. Of course, you can summon the Kizan down, but there's not really anything else on the board you want to be linking off. Like, we've got SP set up as it is, and there's only 3 counters left on the dojo. Obviously, I could use it to summon out something like a Thuma, but we started with Thuma, so we don't have direct access to another tuner unless you want to go down something. Like, this is where Baron would be perfect, because you would get rid of 3 and then bring out Anarchist, and then Anarchist plus the Great Shogun Shien gets you Baron, which is really cool. I'm pretty sure Great Shogun Shien's a 7. I remember counting earlier. But either way, if it's an 8, you just go for the Tactical Master. It doesn't really matter because that doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, that's kind of what you're looking for. You could, if you wanted to be extra spicy, is you could go into the Chengying, like Sword Soul Chengying, because it'll be a level 10, and then it would gain the attack. And then when you use SP Little Knight to banish, it'll trigger off as well, but just isn't necessary. Like this one, you just want to use as many of your Bushido counters as possible. Search out as many cards as you need, because then you've got discard fodder and everything else with the counters about it. And then we're basically saying to our opponent, any spell you're activating, I'm going to negate. We're saying any spell or any trap you activate, I'm going to negate with a Shien. And then you're only going to be allowed to activate 1 spell, and then I've got a monster negate as well. So that was a swift one into get. Well, I say swift one. I comboed off for like 10 minutes or something. So we're going to go into game 2. My opponent decides to go first. I've hard opened up the Imperm, which is pretty much the only real interaction I've got on this one. And they've opened up double Chandra. So normal summon the first Chandra. Not ideal to use that as your normal summon, but special summon down the second Chandra. And I was kind of like, well, if they go into Bident Dragon, I'll use Imperm to stop it, and then it means they don't get spheres. But it looks like they played it relatively safe. And what I mean by that is they end up putting both of these together for the spheres. And spheres was something I was a little bit worried about, because I was like, if Spheres resolves and they bring out the Kwokimiru Drago, yes, it can be a little bit annoying, because unless people know for sure, but that would actually stop me getting into my brand new Shien, which would be my Omni Negate, the Monster Negate, which is something like you kind of want, really. But they set 2 as well, which is, you'll find out as we go through, that the back row is what wins it. Like, the back row is just MVP on this one. So obviously I could imperm the spheres, which means they're not going to bounce a card, but that's not really worth it for me. So we're going to go Rotor. We're going to try and, like, this is a bit dangerous as well because Droll Bird's running around. That's another card that you need to be very, very careful of in this deck because you do search a huge amount. And I think the one thing, I mean, I'm pretty sure I got called by the grave in there. I might have missed it, but I definitely have Cross Out, which is why I play it. I think Cross Out's just crazy good for the deck. Yes, I know the deck is a combo deck, but at the end of the day, if you can't protect your combo or your combo gets stopped, then you're pretty much ended on nothing. So you want to make sure you protect your combo where at all possible. And the combo can be completed with like 1 or 2 cards. And you usually know that by the time you go through your Great Battle Shogun and get yourself the Gateway, you know that you've gone past like 80% of hand traps. Because as soon as that resolves and gets you the Gateway, you know that there's not an Imperm, there's not a Valar, there's not a Mourner, and there's not a Ash within reason. So as soon as you get your Gateway, the only thing you then need to worry about is Droll and Resolution, which by the time you've done it, you've probably already searched a couple of times. And Ghost Ogre is probably the only other one, and not many people are playing Ghost Ogre. Anyway, so we Rotor, we now activate Dojo. I could have gone for the Kageki and Kizaru, but I went with Hatsume. I was trying to bait out the back rows because I was like, I hard opened up Gateway as well, and I was like, I guarantee one of those back rows is Cosmic Cyclone because I couldn't think of anything else. It would be like Cosmic Cyclone and Imperms. So I was like, okay, well, let's go into the new Shien, Chaining 1 Shien, Chaining 2 Anarchist, trying to get hold of, because like now we're protected from Spheres. If Spheres tries to activate, we can negate and destroy it. And then we've got Dojo still set, ready to go, that if I need to get another extender to the board, I can. In hindsight, well, I mean, like, even if I went with the original Shien wouldn't have done anything because the original Shien would have just been bounced by Spheres. So I think I worried about Spheres a little bit too much than I needed to. But the idea is we now have 6 strike. We now have, not 6 strike, sorry, we've got Cunning. And what I like about Cunning is the ability to, so you activate the Shien, negate the effect, and then you activate Cunning to send the Shien and then bring back the Shien with its effect still live. It will lose the effect that all monsters your opponent controls lose. I think it's that they reduce their levels by 1 because we used Anarchist to make it. But it really, like, Hatsume isn't the one you kind of want to hard open. So we go to battle phase, we try to get rid of Spheres, attempt to use Spheres effect. We'll use Shien to negate it. Still get the second effect of Spheres because it was tributed, and I'm like, yeah, okay, that's kind of how it is. I probably, at this point, should have chained Cunning. Because if I chain Cunning, send the Shien, at least I'd be able to bring the Shien back, and then when Fardra summons, I would be able to use Shien to negate. Now, obviously, hindsight is a wonderful thing, and we'll soon see why it wouldn't have mattered. But we're still in battle. Obviously, I could attack the Fardra, but then Fardra brings back Chandra. Chandra does something else as well. So there's the Cunning. Send the Shien, and then attempt to revive a Shien. And this is where I get my first taste of a wonderful card called Dominus Impulse. And I was like, I hadn't really read Dominus Impulse till this moment, but I read it and I was like, oh, it's when any card is activated that special summons a monster. I was like, bro, that's broken. I was like, that's a big downer because now I've lost this. And I was like, there's definitely, like, I still think that back row is Cosmic Cyclone. I was like, as soon as I activate a Gateway, there's no doubt in my mind that that gets hit. Now, it wouldn't have done anything for me. Like, if I'd activated early doors, yes, of course, it would have been Cosmic early. It would have been completely pointless. And once Gateway gets banished, you just can't get it back. So you then need to start making plays to work around it a little bit more. So I think the Impulse was massive. And then the next play that gets made is also massive as well. And it kind of confirms my theory that the Cosmic Cyclone is a thing. I could use Dojo, I could send it, I could summon, but the only thing I'm going to be able to summon is, like, it's not going to do anything. It's just going to be a monster in defense. There isn't really going to add much to it. I could activate Gateway, and then I'd still be in the same predicament. Like, it doesn't go anywhere because there's not a Link 1 6 Samurai monster. So it's really just thinking, like, I'm trying to figure out the maths on this one. I'm like, at the end of the day, when it comes back to it, they make Fardra and Chandra, and I set 2, and I'm like, okay, one of those set cards is the Imperm, and they decided in the end phase to activate Cosmic. I'm like, there's 3 cards you can hit. 2 of the cards I don't mind you hitting, one of them I do, and he hits the Imperm straight away, and I was like, yeah, no! Because the idea was, like, as soon as you put Fardra to Chandra into Biden, I go Imperm on the Biden, and then Biden doesn't bring anything back, and then that gives me another turn with Gateway, and without having to worry about a Cosmic Cyclone. So they've only got the 2 cards in the hand. I was like, okay, well, whatever this could be. Now, I've just seen their hand there. It looks like they've got a Sangan Kaiman. So it probably didn't make any difference whatsoever, because you would go Biden Dragon, and I'd be like, okay, cool, activate Imperm, hit the Biden Dragon, and then they would go Sangan Kaiman. But I was like, yeah, scoop it up. Let's go into game 3. So draw phase, they start off with Shifter, and they chain the Molchummy. I'm thinking about the Molchummy because my hand is Kizan and Tactical Master, and I'm like, well, straight away that makes them draw 2 cards. And on top of that as well, I've got to play under Shifter, so I've got to be a little bit more reserved. Luckily, I've got a way to negate an effect, which is quite nice. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting one. So I'm debating whether I want to Ash the Molchummy, and I ultimately end up do. Spoiler alert. But I was just trying to figure out, I was like, under Shifter, what do I end up giving them? I end up giving them 2 draws, and I'm like, well, they've got 3 cards in the hand. If I starve off their resource, so let's go with Ash. And I've also got a Judgment as well. Judgment is actually MVP in this entire play. So we go normal summon the Strategist, special summon down the Kizan. And the reason for that was if I opened up a second Strategist, which I do, I believe, I can special summon it down. So I can synchro both of these together. This gets me into the Shien. Put it in defense, playing around Lightning Storm a little bit. Use Shien's effect. Obviously, the only thing that happens is all of my opponent's monsters lose 500 attack because of the Tactical Master. But we're going to use Shien's effect. We're going to use this effect to resolve and add. And then it's basically just trying to get follow-up for the next turn. Because the more I play into this, the more I burn through resource, the more I let it go under Shifter. So it's not really worth me doing. And obviously I've got a Judgment in the hand as well. So it's like, well, the Judgment will deal with any normal summon. So the Pydra or whatever. If you starve that normal summon, the next thing that can happen is that they can Sangan summon in, search out a Genroku, and then because it's not a monster they control, I can negate it with the Shien. So I've kind of got a little bit of the corners blocked. So we go for Anarchist. The reason I went with Anarchist is because obviously it can get me Cunning. So if my Shien is able to survive, I can attack with Shien in the battle phase, then activate Cunning, send the Shien, and then bring back the Shien, which is kind of important. So we've got a bit of hand advantage. We're going to set 1 card, which is going to be the Judgment, and we're going to pass there and just starve their resource. Like, just don't let them get anything, really. But it looks like they've hard opened up a Terraforming, which is pretty good, because I mean that would, if my back row is an Imperm, then straight away that shuts it off, and I'm like, yeah, cool, Terraforming, off you go. I've already used the Ash on the Molchummy, which was worth it, otherwise they would have got 2 draws, which is definitely something you don't want to be giving Tenpai. So Terraforming going directly into the Sangan Summoning, which is, you know, pretty standard. I wouldn't expect it to go for anything else really. Activate the Sangan Summoning, and this is where it gets like quite important, because now with 2 cards, I think it's 2 cards in the hand. So go for the Pydra, and I'm like, yeah, no, Pydra, get out of here. Like, don't even let that hit the board, because now it puts them in a position, like I said, the only thing they can search to get a Tenpai on the board is Genroku. So if they get the Genroku on the board, like, they're not going to get it on the board. Like, they would need to have a Droplet, or they would need to have a Talents. And even when they have a Talents, I still then need to have activated the Shien, and then activate the Shien for them to Talents and either draw 2 or steal. So, yeah. And then if I'm worried about an Impulse, I'm not really special summoning anything, so I'm not really too worried. So they activate the Genroku, and I think it's at this point where they go, oh, yeah, Shien deals with that. And they've got a discard card as well, so curious as what gets discarded. So it's a Chandra that gets discarded. It looks like there's a Dominus Impulse being kept in the hand there. But then it's like, if they activate Genroku, I just activate Shien, and then that leaves them with absolutely nothing. Whereas the way they're looking at it now is like, if they end on an empty board, then I mean, I could have OTK'd. You'll see in a minute that I make a major misplay and I kick myself for this, but it should be enough. So I top deck the Kageki, which is great because the Kageki can then attempt to special summon down the Anarchist, and that baits out the Impulse, which is actually really important, because now I just go, okay, cool, Anarchist. Now, I bet they forgot that I searched out the Anarchist, otherwise you wouldn't have done that. You would have been like, yeah, okay, whatever, summon down the Anarchist, and then I synchro into a Shien and then try and move my place further forward. But yeah, this is where I make a major misplay and I forget something really important, because I was trying to figure this out. I was like, can I get to game? What can I do? Like, I know they've got the Genroku in the hand. Can I go for OTK? And I was like, yeah, okay, I can go for OTK. But I skipped a step. I went too fast. So I went straight away, activate Shien, but forgot to activate Anarchist to grab me back the Cunning. That's what would have given me game. Because then what I do is I add the Cunning as well. I summoned down the Great Shogun, I shifted it to attack, and I was like, no, I forgot. And then you can see how I moved back from the table as well. I was like, I forgot to activate to get Cunning, because then I could have gone battle phase, on board is 7,500, and then activate Cunning, send a Shien and put it down. The only difference is the Shien now has the ability that all my opponent's monsters are reduced by 1 level. So that's quite tricky against Tenpai. And then the card that I had in my hand is Asceticism, and there's none of those cards on the board that can get me Asceticism. The other issue as well is when I normal summon Kageki, I couldn't use Asceticism because Kageki was up to 1,700. So there isn't a 6-am in the deck that is 1,700 attack that I play. Otherwise, you could have had it at 200, and then 200 would have got you the Tactical Master. So there is method in the madness on that one. And that's why I think the Asceticism, it's a really good card, don't get it wrong, but I saw builds prior to this that were playing like 3 of it, and I was like, I don't think it's that good. Like, I actually really rate the Cunning. The fact that Cunning non-targets revives from the graveyard just gives you that ability to kind of dodge around a little bit. And I think that's where it really, really helps the OTKs. And I'm just trying to figure out, like, if I link 2 of these together, if I go into, if I work my way into the Battle Shogun, will that get me any more advantage? Do I help myself out in any way whatsoever? And ultimately, it kind of boils down to that, no, it won't make any difference whatsoever. And we should just be like pushing him for, like, not OTK, but we should be pushing him for the game, really. So, yeah, that's what we're trying to work towards. And then we link 2 off into SP, and the SP just gets rid of Sangan summoning, because then it means they haven't got a starter up the next turn. They've only got 500 life points left, and they top deck Shifter for game. So, well, Shifter for game, Shifter for turn, and that's not going to help them. Anyway, it was a really good duel. It was quite a bit of back and forth against the male, so it was really fun to watch. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, share. Till next time, as absolutely always, stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.